What up, players? It's Woboss Tab in this mud. Today is July 7th of the July Painting Challenge, and I am going to show you what I've been doing today. I've got the hats, the skin, the reds, the boots, and I'm starting on the metallics for my next squad of guys. I got 10 guys here. The goal of the week, my oath of moment, here's my paintbrush, is I've got 68 infantry in total right here in this box. So I split them up into two groups of 34. Since I've got 3 more weeks, I've decided to do one group of 34, one group of 34, and then for the last week, all of the heavy weapons and stuff. So on this sacred paintbrush, I swear that my oath of moment will be to paint 34 infantry troopers. There's some special weapons scattered about, but most of them are just guys with las guns. So swear your oath of moment on today's video, the July 7th, Day 7 Painting Challenge, and we'll get into it. Alright, so today's daily question is, what is one role-playing or wargaming memory that you have that is the most memorable to you? And I'm going to take you through a role-playing game memory because I feel like these have the most fun and character. So, although I do have a lot of Warhammer Fantasy and 40k dice roll stories that I'm sure everybody does, I'm deciding to go with a role-playing game. So, it was Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition, a paper and pen role-playing game, and the campaign was called the Doomstones campaign. My party of adventurers was looking for a bunch of these ancient stones of power that could, each one of them was attuned to one of the elements. So there was like the Doomstone of fire and of ice and of wind and I think earth. And so they were trekking up this mountain trying to track down the Doomstone of water, I think, or ice, I can't remember. And they were trying to get to the top of the mountain to see if they could find out where this Doomstone was. And as they were getting up the mountain, it was all snowy and stuff. The book said that one of the random encounters was for them to get ambushed by a group of goblins. And the goblins had this special rule where they would try to grab people and throw them off the side of this cliff where they would die from the fall, and then they would scamper down and take all their stuff. So the goblins are trying to wrestle with my party of adventurers and throw them off the mountain, and my troll slayer decides to create a diversion and kind of basically say he'll take all of them on while the rest of the party runs up the mountain and continues to look, and then he'll join them later. So he creates this big diversion, and he starts screaming and getting all the goblins' attention. The rest of the party is able to break away and continue running up the mountain while all the goblins run and attack my troll slayer. So the guy's name who played it is Alex, and I remember he was just this really fun, creative, just a funny guy. He's one of those guys that every game master wishes would be in their group. And I just had a great time role-playing with him all the time because he would always come up with these crazy plans and tactics and ideas. So all the goblins are attacking him, and meanwhile the rest of the party is running up the mountain, and they find this little shack built into the side of the mountain on these very rickety wooden beams holding them up. So they decide to kind of run in and rest and see if they can do some first aid on each other before continuing or waiting for the troll slayer to get done. Meanwhile, the goblins are trying to succeed on their agility rolls and their weapon skill and strength rolls to grab him and throw him off the mountain. And he saw what they were doing, and he's like, oh, hell no. So he starts saying he's going to, instead of chopping them with his big axe, he's going to start grabbing them and throwing them off the mountain instead. So he's making all these rolls, and I mean, just the picture that it made of all these goblins trying to grab him and yank him and throw him off the mountain. And meanwhile, he picking them up with his big beefy hands and throwing them off the mountain instead. I mean, it was just one of those nights where you and your friends are just having a lot of fun sitting around the table, eating chips and salsa and drinking soda and just like laughing and having a good time. And so the rest of the party is patching themselves up and doing first aid in this cottage and kind of looking around. And one of them, who's the thief, starts like snooping around for stuff. So he's like opening the drawers and looking under all the old furniture. But this shack was built a long time ago, so it's very rickety. And one of the things, something happens, and he kind of tips the balance of the way the shack is built, and because it's so old, it starts breaking. So the shack falls down the mountain, and it starts sliding down the mountain, causing this avalanche and sliding back down towards where my Troll Slayer character is. So Alex is fighting off these goblins, throwing them off the mountain, and finally it's down to him and this one lone goblin. It's not even a war boss. He had thrown the war boss and the shaman off the mountain like a couple turns earlier. So it's just this tiny, weedy, little common runt of a goblin that's trying to grab him and pick him up and throw him off the mountain. And I'm rolling for this goblin, and I'm making all of my agility and strength tests. So Alex is just getting so frustrated because this little goblin is like grabbing him and throwing him up into the air, and he's trying to roll to not fall off the mountain and turn around and grab the goblin and throw him off the mountain. And in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and all the role-playing games for Warhammer, you have these things called fate points, and you only get like 2 or 3. And fate points are these things that you can burn in like only if you're about to die, or if something catastrophic is going to happen, and it's basically fate intervening and saying that you were destined for greater things or whatever. So he's got like 1 fate point left, and he was going to save it for when they got to the end and they had to fight the greater demon, and obviously the greater demon would smash him into the ground, but instead he decides to burn his fate point so he doesn't get thrown off the mountain by this little goblin. And he's just trying, and he's really failing all of his rolls to grab the goblin and throw him off the mountain. So the two of them are picking each other up and throwing each other down the hill, getting towards the edge of the cliff, and they see this cottage like careening towards them down the hill, being followed by this giant snow avalanche. And the two of them get hit by the cottage, and it sweeps them down the mountain, and so they have to roll for agility to see if they get lost in the avalanche, and both of them are able to grab hold of the cottage as it's going down, and they're like holding on for dear life. And it's just the image of this shack, this like rickety little shack, like skiing down the side of this mountain, being followed by this giant avalanche with a dwarf troll slayer and a little goblin holding on for dear life on the top. And it was just one of the best nights ever. And then it crashes into this clearing at the bottom, and all the adventurers are like picking themselves up and dusting themselves off, checking to make sure they didn't break anything. And the little goblin is trying to sneak away because in the book, it's basically stated that it's a random encounter. The goblins aren't supposed to put up much of a fight, and it's just because of unlucky rolling and because they decided to split up that they took so long with this little ambushing patrol of goblins. So the troll slayer, Alex, he picks himself up and he says he wants to sneak up behind the goblin and slap his hand on his shoulder and say, you're a part of us now, and you're in our group. So they decide to tie a little leash around the goblin's neck and keep him as like a little mascot. So for the rest of the campaign, they're walking around and they've got this little goblin. And Alex said it's because the goblin earned his respect and his just for fighting him for so long. So they train him to do little tricks, and they train him not to run away. And the little goblin ends up following them along for the rest of the campaign. And that's one of the great things about role-playing games. You can have something so simple in the book, and when you begin the night, there's no indication that it's going to be any big crazy thing, and it ends up being like one of the most fun, unexpected parts of the entire adventure. How they got a little goblin mascot. Okay, so that's my day 7 question. What is one miniature wargaming or role-playing experience that you had that just sticks out in your mind and that you'll remember forever? Share one, because I'm sure you've got a whole vault of them in your memory like I do, and then we'll get on with it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Laters!